masse se répète par terre. La foule sort, se disperse. Restent deux femmes et un parapluie au coin de la rue.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Poetry to Ears podcast. I'm your co-host Lulu.
I'm Tom.
We are so delighted today to have with us AFLO the poet. AFLO the poet is a black woman poet from Brighton. She is known for bringing black poets together from the city, especially of marginalised genders, and her work focuses on race, gender, and mental health. And without further ado, we bring you AFLO the poet. AFLO the poet is a very well-known poet in Brighton. Every person I talk to knows you, so you can be proud of that.
Oh, wow.
Every person. Then I said, I'm going to interview AFLO the poet, or I did an article about AFLO the poet. So for context, I did an article about you for the Badger, Sussex University student newspaper. So I think we're going to repeat maybe certain things and expand other things.
But that's okay. It was great chatting to you the first time, so I'm sure it's going to be great this time.
And we're so happy to have you on the podcast, and thank you for agreeing to meet a second time.
Oh, no, thanks so much for having me. Thank you.
So we're on Zoom for context, if the audio sounds different. But both in Brighton. We're all in Brighton at the moment.
all in Brighton. Just feeling a bit sniffly today. Wanted to protect you from my sniffles. So
Are you from Brighton originally?
No, I'm from Oxfordshire originally. I'm from a town called Whitney, which is actually, or was, David Cameron's constituency.
Right.
When I lived there. So very different to Brighton. I moved to Brighton just over 10 years ago and have been here ever since.
And so you've been here the whole time?
Yeah, I found it quite hard to leave. Really like this little city by the sea.
Have you been tempted to move to London at any point?
London really scares me, you know. Like I feel my body feels entirely different when I'm in London, just with the big buildings around. I know that it's not big buildings everywhere, but London's also really big, and especially compared to Brighton, where you can get around everywhere mostly on foot. I just find it a bit overwhelming and makes me feel really small. So I don't know. It's nice to visit, but
you went to London though for a poetry night recently, right?
Yeah. I had two London gigs in 1 week, which is very unusual because they were some of my first London gigs. It was great to be in a new space and around new people. Because as you say, I guess on Brighton's poetry scene, quite a few people do know me. And so it was nice to kind of be in a room where I know probably only 2 people have heard my stuff, and to kind of get any feedback, because it's been a hard winter to write poems. I don't know if you felt the same. Been finding the creative expression a bit tricky recently.
I think you may have found it the opposite, in fact.
Well, I forced myself to write in December, to write 1 poem.
There was some kind of competition.
Yeah,
right?
So I've done that in December, but since then I maybe wrote 2 poems. So
that's still 2 poems, and we're only at the start of March. That's pretty good. That's 1 a month so far.
Sure.
Yeah, you're doing all right.
It's interesting what you're saying about feedback, because you were mentioning that earlier, that it is sometimes difficult to get feedback when you're a poet, because if you're surrounded by people who love you as a person and love what you do generally, and maybe it's difficult for them to give you honest feedback when you do mess up, when you do write something that's not great.
Yeah, definitely. I also think whether you're around friends or not, at an open mic, I think it's as they should be really welcoming, inclusive, supportive spaces. And I guess sometimes or not sometimes, all the time, it's really unclear whether or not people want constructive feedback, or if you'd even want to give it. Like, I'm not necessarily listening to people at an open mic with that constructive feedback in mind. We're just there to like support people and take it in. But yeah, it would be nice to maybe have a more regular group, maybe an open mic of some sort where, yeah, that kind of is invited. What do you think about that? Sorry, I'm asking you the questions now.
You're interviewing, okay. Well, I feel like I have different experience to you because I haven't done a lot of open mics, so open mics are really like a great feedback source for me. You hear the reactions of people, and usually it's positive and it's encouraging, you know, compared to just doing your own poems and sharing to a couple of friends and stuff like this. But yeah, it would be great to have some kind of workshop, you know, in that sense.
But specifically for critical feedback, maybe among like contemporary poets, like people that are doing the same thing as you.
Yeah, perhaps. Because some stuff that I submit for like publication sometimes doesn't go through, but they tell you why, because I think they just answer to the people that they want.
Yeah.
And we could have like a community in that sense.
Yeah, I think it would be really useful because it is just difficult to set up those relationships, like elsewhere. There's positive as well as like, oh, how can we improve for next time? Because you do just want to support people in their creative expression. I found giving feedback really difficult at first, because whether you know the person or not, it's just like, no, that's great. I liked what you were doing with that. Cool. Like, maybe, I mean, if I wrote about the same thing, it would be different because we're different people. So hard to know where to place your opinion sometimes. Yeah, maybe you should start that, Lulu. Maybe you should start a group.
Well, I'm actually thinking there has been a WhatsApp group created like 3 days ago. Have you heard? It's called In the Margins, and it's just a poet in Brighton called Shonin, who kind of wanted to bring people together, all the poets from Brighton together. And now we have a group with like 13 people, so I'll definitely add you to it.
Wow. Yeah. It's like the stars are aligning, you know?
Yeah. So maybe we could do that in that group, you know? Because everyone's creating, so it is all supportive. Because the only kind of really critical feedback I ever received was when I was a really young teenager, and I started putting my little collection together, and I sent it to a friend who's very harsh, and then it really demotivated me to write. So I had to recover from that.
Oh, wow.
How old were you then?
I was like 14. Yeah.
You didn't start writing poetry until you were 27 or so, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true. Yeah, you kind of I've already had the world batter me. But yeah, I don't think I could have been quite so brave as to share like my own work not that I was writing, but you know, to share something so big of yourself at 14. I definitely didn't have the courage to, which is probably why I didn't start writing until I was 27, actually, or at least sharing and writing.
Do you feel like the age you were at allowed you to be more vulnerable? Because I think, like, I certainly feel that being vulnerable is hard all the time.
Yeah, being vulnerable is hard all the time. It's definitely like a superpower. I feel definitely like my age has come into it a bit because I'm further ahead in like my own recovery from trauma and mental health differences. And even though that journey is still like a bumpy road, you know, there's enough distance between me and some things that have happened in my life that I feel more able to write about them, and then more able to share those words with other people. I think if I was writing in my early 20s, I don't think I'd be sharing what I'd written I think it would have to be a very like personal thing, because still very close to your heart. Like I think you've heard this poem, Lulu, but I wrote a poem about what it feels like to survive sexual abuse. And I wrote it for the Survivors Network for, I think, their 30th anniversary in 2020. And they didn't ask me to like write it in particular or to write about my own experience or anything. That was my own choice. But I knew that it would be shared on social media. I just then didn't think until I'd uploaded it, like, well, actually, I don't know how I feel about that being on the internet. And it didn't go into anything in great detail, but it was obviously a big thing to share about myself, even if I'd already shared, associating yourself with certain groups, you kind of share that you've had an experience, but you don't write a 2-minute poem on it. And I went into like quite a dark and reclusive place afterwards, because it was too soon to share it. And I have done again since. I think maybe when I saw you, it was at Words by the Water that I shared it in real life again for the first time. Again for the first time, my words aren't coming out well today. And yeah, I performed it in real life, and I felt my heart coming up in my throat, but it was a different experience to when I shared it online. And when I've shared it since, it's felt much easier and clearly in a different place with it now.
It's some true expression rather than just a recitation. It's really interesting.
Do you think there is a difference between sharing online and, this with this question of feedback, of having it out there and not knowing who's going to hear it, and sharing in a space that can be like kind of a safe space where everyone is sharing something?
You get immediate feedback.
Yeah, they are completely different spaces in my mind. Like, I don't really tend to share much on the internet anymore, really, because I much enjoy the experience of sharing in real life. And I know you can do both, but kind of want people who come and see me to not be able to see everything online. So, because I'm very much an all or nothing person, I'm now uploading nothing online. But there's also the really amazing thing about the internet is that people who you couldn't meet in real life can hear your work, and you can get amazing feedback from that. So like in the summer of 2020, me and my best friend and fellow poet Pris Nash wrote a poem together called Wake Up, and it was directed and filmed by Sam Parish-Rooks, and the video was very well made. Obviously, because Sam's great at his job, and I could never have done something like that. And so I think the visuals with it as well, going on the internet, made a difference. But the reach and impact that has had has been ridiculous. So much more than any of my other poems. And it's gotten me a lot of opportunities, and I've been able to speak to people around the world because they've seen it, so I guess there's obvious positives and negatives to the internet, as we probably already know, but I would definitely lean more on the sharing in open mic spaces, because the community around poetry, as I'm sure you both know, is wonderful, and it's been so vital to it feels every aspect of my life in the last 3 years since I've started sharing. So yeah, I'm here for open mics over internet.
Yeah, and sorry. Okay. Yeah, one aspect of I think your work compared to maybe other poets is that everything you do is spoken word. There's no transcription even online. So I was wondering what it meant for you. Is it some kind of maybe copyright of, I want to have this poem read out this way or performed this way?
I am a bit of a control freak, some might say. Yeah, that is definitely part of it. I've really struggled when I've written my poems down. So last year I had the opportunity to be in an exhibition at the Phoenix Art Space in Brighton, and I shared some poetry videos and others were written on the wall, and I felt so difficult when I was writing it in the Word document of how do I space this, because I want it to sound like this. And when I've recorded my work in the studio, you can see that like it's nearly exactly the same each time. I use the same inflection to breathe in the same space. Like I know where it's going because I know the piece, and I want it to sound a certain way. And yeah, when you put it on paper and leave it for someone else to speak or hear it, it might not sound the same, and I don't like it.
It sounds
But also,
like songs, but singer-songwriters, and it's like you can write the lyrics and publish the lyrics, but the people can't sing necessarily the way you would sing it, the way you would perform it.
And what makes a song is not the lyrics, is everything that goes with it.
That's it. It's the whole experience. And also, like I decided to have a go at spoken word when I was 27, because when I was really young, I wanted to be a rapper. I just didn't think that I could for a number of reasons, really. And so for me, it has always been about like not just the speaking of it, but the sharing of it. Like that's been the main part. When I was 27, so yeah, like New Year 2018 or 2019.
I think you said 2019.
Yes.
In the interview.
Oh, you're so good, Lulu. My brain gets so scattered sometimes. Thank you. Yeah, January 2019. I just decided as kind of a New Year's, not resolution, but like a goal for myself. I thought it would be good for me to write a poem about something I've experienced and share it and just see how that felt. And it was really great. So I just kept on going. So even the point of writing it was to share it and speak it. So yeah, I haven't come away from that really. I would really like to publish some written work and have a collection and have my work more accessible in that way as well. I just haven't gotten around to it just yet.
It led you very far from a challenge for New Year to what your work is now.
It's a bit bananas really, isn't it? Like I think I'm glad that I stuck with that intuition because it's given me so much. And like if we'd have chatted in 2017 and you'd have asked me, do you like poetry? I'd be like, nah, not my bag, mate. Don't like it. Boring. Because my experience of school, it felt like I only really saw one kind of poetry, and that was a very white kind of poetry that was often about the war or fields, like either war, which feels, I couldn't find the words at the time when I was at school as to why that felt uncomfortable, but I understand it a bit more now. Like it feels very colonial and often rooted in systems of oppression. I'm not about it. Don't like war. And I found other poems about like fields and flowers and stuff really boring. I didn't come across the kind of poetry that I get to hear in Brighton and that I see on social media with other people that I've met around the country and around the world. Like it's people talking about their often very real, very raw lived experiences and a real opportunity to share and build connection. Like yeah, my life has grown so much and I've been filled with so many precious moments through poetry and other poets. Yeah, changed my life. Great New Year's resolution.
Yeah.
You think it's why people relate to rap and hip hop perhaps more more relatable issues. It's less pretentious, maybe more immediate.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. Even though I guess wrongly a lot of the time, like rap and hip hop or UK grime and drill, particularly at the moment, is a prime example of how those genres are often accused of maybe speaking about negativity too much, or violence, or things that aren't positive, not putting positive messages into the world, when really it's people's way of documenting their own histories and experiences. That maybe some people maybe write about doing things they haven't done just for clout, but in general it's another way of expressing voices that are typically oppressed. And that's what I love about spoken word. We all get a voice.
So kind of like a technical question, I suppose, is what's the difference for you between when you were doing rapping and when you were doing spoken word poetry? Is there any difference in like the accent you use, the way you cut words off or shape words or pronunciation of words? Is there any difference at all?
I don't think so. It's, for me, the only difference is the writing pattern. So I stick with a typical like 4 beats and 4 bars, that's a stanza. 4 of those, that's 16. And as long as it fits in that, it's fine. But I don't think I sound different, but maybe I do, because there's also a different energy behind it. Or like I've noticed I feel more anxious when I'm performing, and I guess I am rapping. It feels weird to say I'm rapping now because it's like a dream come true. Little me is like screaming and flailing her arms around right now, so happy. But yeah, when I've performed with a band and I've written to a beat, I feel more anxious because I need to keep up. So I think maybe that tension like does come across in the way that I've written, and the way that I perform it is just maybe feels a bit more on edge because I'm more on edge. There's no time to like pause, otherwise I'll mess it up.
Yeah, I mean, of course, that you've hit upon the key difference there is that there's no music when you're doing spoken word, right?
Well, typically, yeah. I would really like to write to like a soundscapey kind of thing as well, and not
that would be so great.
Yeah, like not feel so caught by the beat, or something really jazzy where you just like you take your already written pieces and then perform like with a live band and just see what comes up, like improvising off each other. I'd quite like to give that a go too.
Yeah, I would love to do that on some lo-fi beats actually.
Yeah, I very much agree with you there, Lily.
And when you write a poem, I was wondering, how do you balance kind of the spontaneity of words that is kind of trivial and the lyrical aspect of writing a poem?
I really like using Rhyme Zone. Do you know Rhyme Zone?
No.
So it's like if you type it into your internet browser, it'll pop up. But it's a rhyming site. So if you type in a word, it will show you words that rhyme with it. You can choose an option for it to show you near rhymes. It can show you synonyms, so that like, but if the rhymes aren't quite working, see if you can pick a different one. And I like using that to get inspiration of where I might go to next, even if I don't necessarily go with the word I thought I was going to go with.
That is such a useful tool. Oh my god.
Yeah, sorry, I really thought I was cheating for a long time by using Rhyme Zone, but the more people I talk to, a lot of people use rhyming sites and other helpful tools. Like, it's really difficult to have the whole dictionary at your fingertips, and you shouldn't expect yourself to.
Yeah.
So.
we should kind of break the gatekeeping of poetry and rap, right? From what
Yeah, I just think because I think I concentrate a lot on rhyming, and maybe it not being in such like a typical structure, but I also like fitting in those predictable rhymes. You know, when you're listening to something and you know it's going to rhyme next, I still like to. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I like rhyming, and so it's a really useful website. I was trying to bring myself back to your question, and I can't quite remember what it was.
It was balancing the triviality of everyday words and the lyrical aspect of poetry.
Oh, so you mean kind of like common words and more kind of
metaphors,
poetic words, more literary words?
Yeah.
Okay, I was getting there then.
Yeah,
that was such a beautifully worded question. I just went on a whole ramble. But yeah, I think RhymeZone is a really good website to use to, even then if you want to put in a synonym or just to see if like this really fluffy word rhymes with something else, or sometimes even putting definitions into your poetry as well. Like if you want to use a turn of phrase or a word that you think, or maybe people might not know what I mean, you can then tell them what it means. There's no rules that say you can't.
Yeah.
But I guess I also tend to steer away from maybe making my poetry too fluffy, without meaning to sound insulting in any way. Because I guess I write a lot about experiences of racism or mental health, and even though I'm using this as a creative expression, I also like to share my work and have others connect with my work. So I don't want it to be too metaphorical that it could be misinterpreted, or that someone might not get it or I might not get them. And I guess personally I get a bit lost when poems are too metaphorical, especially in spoken word, because I'm really trying to be like listening to, and it's like, what you feel like what now, and then I lose the original point that was meant. But that's me personally and how I listen to things. So
I think sometimes if words are clear, they can be more hard hitting as well, right? They can hit straight to the point. You know, they can really hit the point.
Yeah, and also how you use up time and space. So if you use a big pause, make people reflect on it. That's what you mean. I guess I do that in my work as well, thinking about a couple of points where I have been metaphorical. I then pause. So I want people to go like, ooh. If one person gets it and goes, ooh, then other people start to cotton on. That meant something. Oh, it meant this. You know?
I think there's definitely an acting part to spoken word, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, performative, but in that sense of perform, I guess.
Yeah, it has felt weird at times actually, like calling it a performance, even though it is a performance. I then, because my poetry and like activism feel so closely linked, I've then had my own internal battle about feeling like I'm performing. You know what I mean? Even though, as we were saying earlier, it feels like my poems are like scripted, because I know where I'm going to use a certain inflection or where I'm going to pause, or, you know. What do you think about the term performance when you're sharing something that is real and you don't want it to be performative, using air quotes?
Yeah, I mean, an aspect of performing, I guess, is like a good actor is improvising on the text that is given to them, right? And I do see that in your spoken word much more than when I read out a poem, because I do the opposite way. I read it. I mean, I write it to be read and then read it out. But I don't necessarily think so far about the intonation and this kind of thing. And I don't know them by heart like you do, because I have got a terrible memory. And that's why I stopped acting. So I definitely see more that acting aspect in your spoken word, but in a great way. And because in a way you know them so well that you can find again what's true and what's spontaneous.
Ah, thanks. Yeah, that was a nice way of putting that. Thank you. Yeah, I see that.
It's are you worried that if something's too polished that it's going to be inauthentic, you know, like the emotion's not going to be real, or it's not going to come across as real?
I guess not even how polished it is necessarily, but that idea, I don't know, because my poetry became more popular from speaking and sharing at protests. And so it then feels a certain way, I guess, to go from an activist space to being paid to speak and do the same thing. Not in a purposefully activist space, but a lot of creative spaces are activist spaces, I would say. I don't know, it then adds to the feeling of it being a performance, you know. So I'm just letting you in on like some of my deepest internal conflicts.
I think it's key to the heart of artists in general, you know, like making peace with that, and also, you know, when making money from your work as well, making a living from your work.
It's part of it being sustainable, I think, you know.
Yeah, and like I support all of my friends in that. It just feels strange for me. I think maybe this is something I will talk about in therapy.
Is there a poem you want to read us out or perform?
I wasn't expecting this. What a surprise. Do you have one that you want me to do? Or...
I had in mind your latest poem that you shared with the video compost.
Yeah, it's actually quite an old one. It's one of the first ones I wrote. Just got to do a video recently with QM.
It's the newest that you shared, actually.
Yeah.
When I listened to you at Words by the Water, this one definitely stuck to me. That line, they wanted us to bury in shit, but they didn't know we were seeds. That was That was it.
You wrote it on the chalkboard.
I wrote it on the chalkboard. Yeah.
Oh, you're so sweet. I think when I first put it online, I did reference that that's not really my original quote. You know, it's got origins in several different cultures, it seems. But you know, they tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds. I added in shit, obviously. But yeah, that's where the whole inspiration from the poem came from. That like, you're actually, that like you're actually burying me in something that's given me great sustenance and great motivation to keep going. So not only am I a seed, but you're helping me on my growing mission by giving me more to grow from, I guess. Anyhow, I'll share the poem. This is called Compost. Over the years, so many people have shat all over me. Empty out your wheelbarrow full of dirt. No need to feel guilty. Your discomfort matters more than my hurt. That's what I learned. I sunk, I stunk, I dwelled and withheld. I laid down and accepted. They tried to sap my joy. Yet here I stand dripping with sap. I support myself. I am nourished, encouraged, cultivated, and demonstrated that I am growth personified. I am strong enough to feed young minds the fruits of my heart and soul, because now I am fertilized. Some people don't know what to do with their trauma. Some people don't know what to do with their shit. Reject it, neglect it, smother others with it, deflect it, redirect it, bury it, then resurrect it. Shit, we feed our loved ones to our wolves, then act surprised when we get bit. And that's why we shouldn't forget the concept of composting. So keep hold of your shit and shove it in a purpose-built bin. It needs tending to every so often. You can't just shove it in a dark place and hope it sorts itself out. But eventually you'll see your shit turned into something you need. Today, I stand before you feeling grounded and tall as a tree, in a way thankful for the shit others threw at me. And don't use my words to excuse, because it doesn't make it okay. But eventually, we grow strong and tall enough to see the positive in every day. So they bid farewell to the folk who have hurt you and to those refusing to meet your needs. They tried to bury us in their shit, but they didn't know we were seeds. Thanks.
Wonderful. Tama, what's your
It's
reaction?
awesome. I'm feeling that hip hop influence there. I'm hearing that the wordplay.
Do you want to maybe give us a little bit of the context of writing this poem?
Yeah. So I guess that phrase, they tried to bury us, they didn't know we were seeds, was the kind of prompt I took. Yeah, I've had a lot of stuff happen in life where it feels like other people's crap gets put onto you, like their projection of their own trauma, or hurt people, you know, and it's not to make an excuse for their behavior, but I definitely felt like I got overloaded with a lot of crap from other people throughout my life in various relationships and situations. And it's not to say that any of it was worth it or okay, but that those bad experiences are actually the things that have shaped me the most and given me the qualities that I'm most proud of. But that's because of my hard work, not them. I churned the compost, I tended to it with help from others and community and friends, you know. But yeah, just kind of leaving people with the message, I guess, that shit can happen, but it can get better. It's not to say that that makes it fine, but you can be empowered to make the change. I don't know.
Definitely. What is the Knights of AFLO? The Knights of AFLO.
The Knights of AFLO?
Yeah, the Knights of AFLO. I've written down here the notes from the article. Some kind of event or...
Is it
AFLO and the Poets. Yeah, I was like, the Knights of AFLO? What's that?
That's the new term now.
Yeah, no, I might be taking that on for like the after parties, maybe. Who knows?
Okay, I revise my question. What's AFLO and the Poets?
So AFLO and the Poets is kind of I like to call it my ever-growing collective. Not that it's really a collective, but because it's taken a few different forms. So it first started on Latest TV. Latest TV offered to do a little TV show with me, asked what I would want to do, and I was like, it would be really cool to bring on local Black artists, like poets and other performers, other creative people based in Brighton to showcase their work. So did a short series of that. It's available on my YouTube channel if you'd like to watch. And from that, was then offered an opportunity at the Dome to perform, and I was like, I can't perform at the Dome by myself. So
imposter syndrome.
Well, it was with like bands and, you know, real oh god, I nearly said real performers. That's not what I meant. Yeah, imposter syndrome. You call it when you see it, Lulu. Yeah, well, it was going to be with bands and singers, and I felt I would like to share this space to amplify the poetic community, you know. So yeah, then another version of AFLO and the Poets was created, and then through QM Records, they offered to help me put together some nights where I curate the artists, and I pick Black artists because doesn't feel like there's enough representation in Brighton, even though there's so many creative Black folks here. So that's my main focus, and often Black women and Black trans and non-binary people. Yes, so we've had 2 AFLO and the Poets in Brighton so far, one in London, one at the Green Door Store, one at the Unitarian Church, and one just last month at, the name has just escaped me, the Old Blue Last in Shoreditch, which is really exciting. And there is another AFLO and the Poets coming up on the 18th of March. A couple of days before that, I'm going to be turning 30. Woo! So it's not only like kind of the 3rd birthday of me doing poetry, but also my 3rd decade on this earth. So yeah, if you're available, please grab a ticket. It's at the Unitarian Church again in the centre of Brighton, and it's going to be brilliant. Going to be performing with Chris Nash and Erin James and Frankie Jean and Miri FLC. It's going to be excellent. Going to be a great birthday party.
Great. And where can we get tickets for that?
You can get them on Dice. I will shortly be putting the link in my bio thingy me what's it. So if you find me on socials at AFLO.thepoet, you'll be able to find it there. But it's also in QM Records bio, and they are at QM Records. They have loads of brilliant events on around Brighton and in London, and another amazing Brighton Black-owned business to support. So yeah, we'd check them out.
This is amazing. I think it's a great way to wrap this podcast up. You definitely see us both. And for any listener,
come join us.
Come to AFLO and the Poets on
Yay!
the 5th of March. Yeah, celebrate your birthday/anniversary.
Yeah, you don't have to bring presents, you know.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Poetry to Your Ears podcast. This was really delightful to have the chance to talk to AFLO.
Thank you so much. You can listen to more of her work on her YouTube channel, AFLO the Poet, and her Instagram as well, AFLO the Poet, AFLO.thepoet. And please follow us on our socials as well. We have an Instagram and we also have a Twitter. It's poetry2 with a 2, the number 2 is. And give us any feedback, we'd be delighted. And see you next time.
Bye-bye.